Welcome, ladies and gents, to a very special episode of Richard Grannon and Friends, where I have here with me my sister, Anna. Hello.
Hi.
Could you tell the good people where you are from?
So you're just trying to annoy me first off.
Let's start with an annoying question.
I am from England, but I live in Southern California.
You're from
I live
England?
in San Diego.
You live in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Whereabouts in England are you from?
The Wirral, Babington.
Babington. The
Specifically.
Wirral, which is by Liverpool, if nobody knows. We're very close to Liverpool.
Yes.
You have an occasional Scouse accent.
I don't know if I do anymore. Maybe if you gave me enough vodka.
If you're annoyed, if you get angry, you go a bit Scouse.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's usually Southern Californian, but can go a bit Scouse sometimes.
Or when you're drunk and you try and say work.
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 I have a problem saying the word goals, but, but I don't say it in a Scouse or a Wirral way. My accent's stuck. I don't know how to say it.
My kids, who are both born and raised in Southern California, say bird, though. They don't say, however an American would say bird. Yeah, bird. Yeah, they don't do that. They say bird.
A bird.
Mummy, look at the beautiful birds. And I'm like, see, they're English.
Quite right. Sounding like two characters from Harry Potter. So what? Let's go through your life a little bit. Where?
Oh, hey,
lad. So where were you raised until what age?
We were born in England and then moved to Portugal about 3.5, I think, and we were there until I was 10 when we moved back from Portugal.
Where in Portugal did you first go to?
Southern coast, so the Algarve.
Mm-hmm.
Very beautiful, very rural then, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember Porsches?
I do remember Porsches. I remember snippets though, because I was really little. So I remember like the marble staircase.
Mm-hmm.
I remember falling down the marble staircase in that house that we lived at with the roof terrace.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about the roof terrace.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember anything about Porsches?
Not really, no.
Do you remember there was a restaurant we used to go to when we were poor, and it was called La Rampa?
I do remember that actually.
You remember La Rampa?
Yeah, I do.
So it was us, an English family, and then construction workers.
I don't remember that, but I do remember La Rampa, yeah.
Yeah, on the menu there was just chicken and beer.
I mean, what else do you need?
Frango
I bet
piri.
They served bread though, didn't they? They must have.
Yeah, Portuguese bread, earliest memories.
Yeah.
Do you remember the cake shop in Porsches?
I remember the cakes with that weird custard in the middle.
Pastel de nata.
Yeah. Gross. Yeah. They had nothing to do with banana, but there was something about them that was banana-y. That sort of weird custard.
Yeah. Pastel de nata. Do you remember any Portuguese?
I understand it, but I don't know if that's because I remember Portuguese or if it's because I studied Spanish.
You're just translating backwards from Spanish.
Possibly, yeah. Not that I really speak Spanish either, but I understand it.
So, age 10, where did you go?
Back to the Wirral, so just outside of Liverpool. And that's where our whole family is. Mm-hmm. So we moved back there and I went to secondary school there. And
which high school was your high school?
Wirral Grammar.
For the homies?
Sorry, Wirral County Grammar School for girls.
Oh, yes, indeed. And then how long were you there for?
8 years, until I was 18, until I went to university.
Where'd you go to university?
Went to university in Newcastle upon Tyne.
And what did you study there?
French and Spanish.
So you've studied French and Spanish at degree level. How's your French these days?
Oh, well, I haven't spoken it since I was 21. So it's sort of like I never learned anything. It's amazing.
I did French at A level and stayed in Dunkirk for a while. So I know it's in there.
Yeah.
It's in there, but it doesn't come out easily.
I feel like that about Spanish as well, though. And then where I live in San Diego is only 20 minutes from Mexico.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge Spanish population, but I think that's why I can continue to understand it. But if somebody tried to have a conversation with me, I think I'd be scared more than anything. More than that, I can't do it. I'd be intimidated to speak.
Probably if you sat at a table with Spanish speakers for a couple of hours, had a few drinks.
I could probably roll it.
Come back. So you were at university until 21, studying French and Spanish.
Yeah.
And in the story of your life, what happened next?
So I was dating a guy from Colorado who I met at the first year of university.
Damned colonial.
And we did long distance for a bit, and then the long distance year that we did was utter torture. You know, we were like 19, 20. And so then we sort of decided, well, we either need to split up or if we're going to stay together, we've got to get married, because we'd sort of exhausted all of our visa options. You know, he'd been to England, and he'd done a tourist visa, and we'd done the sort of illegal thing where you go in and out of the country, but they catch on to that once you've done it 3 times.
Yeah.
And he did a work visa. And you can't really get into America without a visa.
Yeah.
So we were only 21 when we were making this decision, but we'd been together 2.5, 3 years. And we were like, well, clearly we'll be together forever. Yeah. So we'll just sort of fake get married now, and then we'll have a real wedding some other time. So we didn't tell anybody, and we eloped, and we went to Scotland because our mum was living in Scotland then. And
so you got married in Scotland?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At 21?
At 21.
Then you did quite a bit of traveling, didn't you?
Loads, yeah. We moved to Colorado, and we lived there for about 1.5 years, but then we bought a camper van.
Where in Colorado were you?
Durango, so southwest corner, where the 4 states meet. It's called the Four Corners, and it's a mountain town that's almost 7,000 feet high, so high altitude. The most amazing hiking I've ever done. So hiking everywhere else that I've done after that, I'm like, no, it's nice, but in Colorado, it's like you drive to 10,000 feet and then start the hike. It's just amazing. Glacial lakes. And
is Durango the town that was originally called something awful?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it had. I'm sure it was originally called Purgatory.
No, that's the ski resort. So the ski resort was called Purgatory, and they changed it to Durango Mountain Resort.
Which is a much nicer name for a ski resort.
I thought Purgatory was a great name. That's a great name.
It would be purgatory for me trying to ski, I tell you.
Yeah, I only ever did it once. Yeah.
You've skied once?
Skied once, but they were like, oh, you don't need the bunny hill. You're athletic. You're fine. Top of the mountain. Never been on skis. It was not fine. It was horrible. I was like, I'm going to take these off. I'm going to walk down the mountain.
I tried skiing with, we have our cousin Lucy, and we went to that snow dome in Manchester. Yeah. 30 feet. I found the boots extremely painful. So
because you're on an angle, aren't you?
Yeah. And it kind of squeezes you in. And then, I'm heavy, and it's not really my bag. So you were in Colorado for 1.5 years, and then where did you go?
We bought a camper van. So we bought this 1986 Volkswagen pop-up top camper van and travelled all around the States. We went New Mexico, and we went to, we actually went north as well. So we went all the way south first and through some national parks, and we went down to the Baja, which is Mexico just under California. It turns into the Baja. It's really close to where I live now, funnily. And we went all the way down to the bottom of the Baja on one side, and then drove all the way up, right up to Canada on the other side.
Wow.
But it was winter because we were 22, 23 then, and we hadn't planned it very well. And so we were being chased by snow. And so by the time we got to Canada, it was freezing.
Yeah.
So we went back and lived in Seattle for a little bit until it warmed up again.
Yeah.
And then went back into Canada, and then over and down into Montana. And then from there, we sort of wiggled our way across the top of the States all the way over to New York.
What was your favourite place when you say in the States like that?
I actually love Northwest Montana. It's really beautiful.
I've been told that. Really
beautiful, very dramatic, really pretty. I loved Boston when I first got to Boston, really cool. I love New York.
Why did you love Boston? Is it because
maybe
they're basically...
because it's really Irish.
They're the Scousers of America.
Probably.
Did you ever see... There's a movie called The Town by Ben Affleck.
No.
He's on and off, isn't he? Like sometimes he's great and sometimes he's not.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck wrote and directed and acted in this film called The Town.
Yeah.
And it's a good movie. It's good. I've watched it like 3 or 4 times. I'm super critical of movies. This is a good movie. It's internally consistent, which is incredibly important to me.
Richard and I just had a big debate about a book that was not consistent. And I was like, it's a fantasy. Just move on. And he's like...
It really upset me. What's the name of the book?
Red Rising.
Red Rising.
It's really good if anybody wants to watch it.
It's really good, but the author couldn't decide what the violence level was. And is it male or female author? Male author.
He couldn't Brown, I think.
He couldn't decide what the level of violence was. It's a really good idea. It's a cool concept.
It's brilliant.
It's like, it's about class. It's about struggle. It's kind of like a Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, but more violent, more adulty.
More adulty they're in the future, but it's medieval.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't decide what level of violence these children were going to endure. And I think he just
drove Richard insane.
It drove me mad because some days he woke up and he was like, then they're slicing off their ears. And I was like, well, that wasn't what we... Stop it. Anyway, back to The Town. So I was watching The Town, and there's like lads with dodgy haircuts. He says with a dodgy haircut, like shaved up the sides. They're in tracksuits, but they're not going to play tennis. They've got like big gold things on. And then they're sat in a car together. They're like with weird accents being like, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? And I'm like, I've lived this. I'm getting what is this? Oh, the other thing is there's shots of them by a shipping area where there's big shipping containers and they're outside of it deciding what to do with their lives. And I'm like, hey, hang on. That looks like Birkenhead. You've been there. So dodgy haircuts, intense criminality. The town for a while is it's Charlestown in Boston, and it had the highest rate of armed robberies of anywhere in America. Wow. You just couldn't stop the fuckers from committing crimes. Hello, Liverpool. Couldn't stop them. It's a great movie about, trying to break out of that kind of a thing. And I was like, yeah. So when you said you like Boston, I was like,
I did like it.
Could be shades.
And I've actually never been back, but it's just like, it did. It felt like home. It did.
Yeah.
But it's very beautiful.
Is it Boston beautiful?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Every time I'm seeing movies from there, it looks quite industrial and quite rough. And
it is. I think it is. Like where we were down by the water, it's like that. But we were moving to Australia. So we had to go to this massive hospital, this big hospital in a residential area to do all this testing that you have to do to move to the States.
Yeah.
And that area was just gorgeous. It was all like avenues, like lined with tree. It was beautiful.
I know there's the rough side there, but there's tremendous wealth there as well, isn't there? So you're looking at mansions and things, aren't you?
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
For those of you who don't know, Liverpool has a similar history. It's Boston's was a port
town,
mainly, port town mainly, and mainly Irish immigrants who go there. And Liverpool's the same
people.
Same people. It's the peeps. You've not had your DNA done yet, have you?
No.
I'm half Irish.
Well, I thought I didn't need to because you had yours done. This was a few years ago when you told me, and Mum had hers done, and you both got 70% Irish. So I was like, well,
she's now more Scottish than Irish. They change it the more data they get. It's really weird. And genetic expression is not necessarily consistent between a sibling and a mother.
Okay.
Yes. You'd have to ask your Auntie Elizabeth about how that works.
Yes.
We have a geneticist in the family, big flex. So Boston resonated with, and New York as well has that similar.
New York has that like grimy, fantastical big city vibe.
Okay. Boston, more of a town sort of a vibe.
Yes.
Yeah. I've only really seen Manhattan. And like I stayed in the financial district and I walked around there.
Okay. Yeah.
Didn't really have time to soak it all up. 4 days of walking around, but I was like, yeah, and it's got like a Scouse type, but huge. Like if you took Liverpool and then dialed it up times 20.
And it's sort of interesting because it's like when you go to the really touristy bits, then it's really obvious where you ought to go.
Yeah.
But then when you walk around, because that's the thing, and every time I've been to New York, you walk 10, 15 miles a day. And you just walk and walk and walk. And you find these hidden little spots behind corners. And those are the best bits.
I found a place and took a picture of it. And unfortunately, I lost it between modern buildings. And it was obviously a very old pub.
Yeah.
Well, very old by American standards, to be like 100 years old.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they'd kept it. And it was like sandwiched in. It's somewhere in the bottom end of the financial district.
Still short to be height appropriate for 100 years ago.
Right? Yeah. So it was like a little place, very dark brick and very dark looking, and then everything else is like steel and white all around it.
See, I love all that.
I love all that. Where's your favourite place in America overall?
I don't know because I love different places for different things.
It's a big place, isn't it? I mean, it's like multiple countries in one, really.
Yes,
in some way.
It's 52.
It's 52 of them.
I do love where I live now.
Right.
It took me a while to get used to it, but I do love it.
So let's go from where were we? You'd finished caravanning, and where you went?
So we on the East Coast sold that camper van, and they just got really trendy, and so we'd put something 80,000 miles on it, something. And we sold it for more than we bought it for.
God bless you, hipsters.
And so then we flew to Australia and went and lived on the Gold Coast.
What'd you do that for?
The guy that I was married to, my university boyfriend, he did a master's at Bond University on the Gold Coast.
What was his master's in?
Something to do with politics.
Geopolitics.
It's called something else though. International relations.
International relations, yeah. And that was his bag?
It was,
Because? What was his ambition?
I mean, but it changed when we got home. So
yeah. But originally the ambition was the CIA, wasn't it?
Was it? I don't even remember that.
Can Allah.
It's
Women don't listen.
It's amazing we're not still married.
Do you not?
No, I truly don't remember that.
He wanted to join the CIA and then he found he couldn't because he'd married a foreign national.
I've deleted this from my memory.
Yeah, he was for the CIA. He was going to do graduate recruitment for the CIA.
Maybe that was why he was so depressed when we moved home.
Yeah. He didn't know the rules and he got married young. It was like me when I tried to join MI5. I tried originally in Liverpool and then I tried again years later. But I'd been to Malaysia and the second time I made the application, somebody contacted me and were like, did you make this application online in Malaysia? I went, yeah. How long have you been there for? 2 years. They said, if you've lived in Malaysia for longer than 2 months, it's a lifelong ban from the intelligence services.
Oh.
Because it's considered the radicalization capital, or it was at that time, it was the radicalization capital of the world. Not Pakistan. Not
My
Iran.
very small version of this is that America won't let me give blood because I lived, which is crazy because I think I'm O positive.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you want this blood. I'm very healthy. You've got good blood.
Yeah.
But apparently, because I lived in the UK, there's a 5-year range where mad cow disease was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they won't let me give blood. The only person I've ever known to have mad cow disease is an American guy who's never been to England.
Hashtag logic.
But
big
I'm
logic.
hoping at some point they'll change it. I haven't tried in the last 2 years, but I'll go and try again.
So because you were in the UK during... Yeah, wow.
It's a long time. It's like 97 to 2003 or something like that.
Yeah. If you're in the UK, they class you as a risk.
Yeah.
So he couldn't do what he wanted to do with his degree. Where in America are you at this time?
So we moved back from Australia. I wanted to move back to Europe. And he didn't want to move back to Europe because he was afraid he didn't speak any other languages than English. And I'm like, everyone in Europe speaks English. It's amazing. And I wanted to sort of be closer to home, like original home, England home. But I'd made this like best friend in Seattle when we lived there. And so he said, but we could go back to Seattle and be close to Kate. And I was like, I do really like Kate. So we moved back to Seattle and said that we'd sort of talk about it. And I kept researching, he wanted to do a PhD. So I kept researching English speaking universities where he could do a PhD. There was one in Brussels. But he went into a depression then, but I was only 25. So I didn't know what a depression was.
Yeah.
I was like, there was this person that was really cool and really outdoorsy and now he lies on the couch and drinks Bud Light. I'm like, he never really drank before, it was just weird. Yeah. And so I'm a bit overachievy. And so me being me, I was like, well, let's list all the things that you're not enjoying about your life. And it was really everything. It was like his health and his job and where he felt like he was at in his educational career and how he was relating to me and his friendships and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, great, let's just solve all these problems. And so I was like, I did a personal training certificate so that we could work out together. And I got a new job and I got promoted to take the sort of the onus off of him because he felt like he was having to make more money. And I was like, no, I can make more money. Make more money. You can go back to university or whatever you want to do. And so essentially, though, what was happening is that I was sort of catapulting my life forward and making all of these achievements and sort of getting to all these goals. And he was just sort of staying static. And in the end, I was making him feel far worse about himself, which was not my intention, but that's what happened.
So you're both in Seattle at that time.
Yeah.
And the relationship breaks down.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Then I said, we're going to get divorced because I'm not helping you. I'm making you worse.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go. It was my birthday. It was my 26th birthday. And one of my best friends had come out because she knew I wasn't doing well. And I said, I'm going to go away with her for 4 days and you need to please vacate the house by the time we get back. So he moved to New York because his siblings were living there. And I stayed in Seattle for some years after that. I think I was still there another 6 years or something.
There was no nonsense with the divorce. It was like...
No, dead easy. He's a really nice guy, and it wasn't like we were fighting. It just, we just weren't connecting anymore, so...
He's cool. Big ups to that chap.
Yeah,
if he ever
lovely.
watches this, that sound. Smart guy as well.
I know, he's lovely.
So then, how long did you live in Seattle for?
It was a total of 8 years, but I think I'd done 1 year, then Australia for 1.5 years, and then come back.
And did you go to Malaysia on the way back from Australia?
Yes. Because that's where I saw you. And
you didn't see me in Malaysia?
Oh, I didn't. No, I saw Cheryl, didn't I?
Yeah, saw Cheryl, our stepsister. Who's married a Malay chap. And you brought me back is it called a sarong?
I'd call it a sarong. I don't know if there's a different Malaysian word for it.
Jacob, could you look up the Malay word for what a man wears? It might be a sarong.
Okay.
So you came back, then you're in Seattle and you stayed there for 8 years.
I think it was another 6 after that, yeah.
I'd forgotten you were in... Oh. Lalaki. Oh, that's a word for man.
What do you say?
Oh, it's what a man wears.
Man skirt.
Put in man skirt. Malays will not like us calling it a man skirt, but they will survive this pain.
Oh, it is sarong.
Oh, sarong. Okay. Sounds kind of Malay, sarong. So I'd forgotten you were in Seattle for such a long time. How did you find living in Seattle?
I loved it. But as well, I think it's really beautiful only for like 3 months of the year, but those 3 months are really magic.
Very British looking place. That's what Americans usually say to me.
I don't think that it is.
Doesn't feel like England.
No, not to me.
Are they just going, it's rainy and there's trees?
Yes.
It looks like a Richard Curtis romantic comedy.
And it's sort of like, because it's so dramatic. I've never been to anywhere in England that's like it. Like the cities are linked and there's a lot, everything's surrounded by water. The towns are linked rather. And so you'd be driving across bridges and there's mountains to either side of you. And so it's really beautiful. Yeah. But I think as well, I turned 26, been with Cody since I was 18, 19. So I was really single for the first time as an adult. I was working for a pretty much all women's clothing brand.
What's that called?
Anthropology. And I worked for them for a long time. So I had all these friends and it was just, you're in your late 20s. There's nothing, no major responsibilities, is there? You're just sort of living the dream. So it was just really fun. I did love it there. And then sort of once I got to 30, I was like, well, I don't really want to be working retail my whole life. I felt like I'd done my thing in Seattle. So I went traveling for a bit. And where did I go? I went to South America. One of my best friends from here.
Where did you go in South America?
All over. We flew into Rio and we traveled down.
Did you like Rio?
I did love Rio, actually. Lost my wallet on the first day.
Nice one.
Might have been stolen, but...
Maybe it was stolen.
It's possible it was stolen.
We don't want to stereotype, but it was possibly stolen.
I'm from Liverpool. I think I could say if it was stolen. I just genuinely don't know.
I really want to go. Did it remind you of Portugal at all, or...?
No, because it's such a big city.
Right.
So it really did. And we were there in the winter as well, so the beaches were empty, which was great for us, but, that's not my memory of Portugal.
Yeah. So down from Rio, where'd you go?
We crossed at Foz de Iguaçu, the waterfalls that are there, and you go into Argentina, and we went to Buenos Aires, and we went over into Chile, we went up to the salt flats, and we went to, where did we fly out of? Somewhere up further north, I can't think now. Bolivia. We went into Bolivia as well, Uruguay.
Do you recommend it, South America?
It's amazing.
I really want to go.
It's just so different. And, particularly when you're traveling like that and you're going to all these different countries and every single one is so different. Bolivia was fascinating because I think that's probably the poorest place that I've ever been. I mean, it's really... We were on these big buses, driving from one city to the next. And it really is these tiny little old ladies in the fields, carrying all this stuff on their backs. And it's just mad. It's just a completely different way of life. But it's beautiful. You go to the towns and it's really colourful and everyone's very sort of soft. Yeah, it's nice.
What happened next in the story of you?
But I did move back to Seattle for a bit. And then from there, I wanted beach culture, wanted something more like what we grew up with. And I'd never actually been to San Diego, but it just sounded good. So I sold all my stuff and packed everything in a little U-Haul and took some of my friends and went on a little road trip and drove down the west coast of America, down from Seattle all the way down to San Diego. And then we sort of went up and down the coast once we got to Southern California. Went up and down a few times to see where I wanted to live and found Encinitas, which is in the north, but it's like a beach town. And I was like...
One of the most expensive places on the coast. You're like, this is nice.
This would suit me.
The rest of America agrees with you, and everybody who goes there is like, this is nice.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely little surf town.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
How long have you been in Encinitas for?
10 years.
10 years now. What happened next?
Well, I started my little business there.
What's your little business? Tell people.
I have a massage therapy business. It's right on the coast. It's on North Coast Highway. And
do you remember the terrible fear that gripped you when you were still working for Anthropology, weren't you?
Yes. And I knew that was coming to a close because I hated it. I hated it. It was a very different culture in Southern California than it was me coming from Seattle.
How was it different?
In Seattle, it was very... we talked about the people and how to inspire our employees through the clothing. And in California, it was a lot more about money.
Very cynical.
Well, and I don't know if that's through my lens as well. I don't know why I'm trying not to be horrible, like I owe them anything, but it seemed like it was very much more money oriented. For me, that took all the fun out of it.
California is an economic powerhouse, right?
Yes.
I think if it seceded from America, the statistic that people used to quote was it would be the 8th largest economy in the world on its own.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And
realistically, if something goes under for a few months in Southern California, you can't keep paying rent.
Right.
So if you even sort of dip,
you're screwed.
The chances of you dying are high.
You go back to the Midwest where you came from. Because there's loads. What do they call it? Implants? Is that what they... No.
Yeah, they do.
They call them implants.
Yeah.
Obviously, I work with different people in different areas, and I have done since 2004, different areas of America. California's a different culture. People think it's like hippies and surfing, but it's economically wise, it's pretty rough.
I remember you being there and saying that you'd sort of seen this guy and you're like, this homeless looking guy. He's got like bedraggled hair and holes in his t-shirt and his pants are halfway down his bum. And you were thinking, I wonder what that guy's doing here, in this little area. We live in a really nice little area. And then he gets into a Tesla and you're like, oh.
Yes, yeah. He's a multi-millionaire. He's got a startup.
Doesn't need to dress nicely. What's the point?
It's so California. You noticed that the culture was different. You're in Anthropology. I had one culture just up the coast, and then you go there, and
that was very different from what I've moved to. So when I first moved there, I was living downtown because I hadn't found anywhere to live yet.
Downtown San Diego.
So I was living down in the big city, and I was working at Anthropology in this really nice area, and it was also sort of the women that came in were really different. Everybody's got lots of stuff done to their faces, which Seattle, I don't know what it's like now, but 10 years ago, certainly it just wasn't like that. Not where I worked at Anthropology and not where I lived. And everybody was, not everybody, but there was a high proportion of our clientele that would come in that were clearly on some kind of narcotics. Like they were just not present, So even just in that was just an entirely different sea of people that I hadn't really come across before.
Yeah.
And so it really just felt like not my environment.
Yeah.
And but then I almost got fired from there. And sort of, you call it managing somebody out of the business,
right,
where they're unhappy, but they're high level. So you don't want to fire them because then you'd owe them money, California. Yeah. And so you basically make them leave.
Right.
So they did that and I left.
That's unpleasant.
It was unpleasant. I was very sad about it because I worked there for a long time. I'd worked there for, I think 8 years at that point, or nearly 7.5, something like that. And I had such good history with it,
Yeah.
But I really wasn't having a good time there.
Yeah.
And I was terrified because I'd done it for so long and it had allowed me to move, which was great, but I didn't really know what else to do. And while I'd been living in Seattle, I'd done this massage therapy course and I'd got my certificate and I was fully trained and I'd sort of worked on friends and stuff, but I'd also never started a business. So, and that was what I was talking to you about at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm in Southern California with no money. I've got 2 credit cards. We're just going to max them out, And so I started this business and I used to, I just used the friends that I had and, one that's a low-key designer. I'm like, can you design me a flyer? And I used to walk to all of the coffee shops and all of the gyms and talk to all the people at the coffee shops, gyms, yoga studios, and the people that I thought could be my clientele and would also bring me clients. And I'd pin these flyers with these pull-off tabs, which is crazy now because nobody would ever pull off a tab now, I don't think. But 10 years ago, you'd still pull off a tab. People would come in with this little tab with my name and phone number on it and say, oh, I've got this.
Yeah.
And just to advertise and just to get to know people. That was something that I got really from you and I. You remember when we were teenagers, and in Europe, you can sort of fly to different countries to go and work for the summer, can't you?
Yeah.
But you don't have a plan. It's not. You didn't look online before you went. That wasn't a thing.
You just rock up.
So you just go, find somewhere to live, a hut somewhere, and then you just walk the streets, wouldn't you? Yeah. And find somewhere to work.
Just ask people, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was sort of like that, but building a business.
And how did it go?
It was fab, actually. It's slow. The first 6 months I probably didn't make any money, and I was putting every supermarket bill on a credit card, but then it turned. And it's the nice thing about being somewhere that's wealthy as well is that you can start to make an hourly rate that's higher than you would, like if I was still doing that somewhere else in England, because the family always say, well, just come back to England, move back to England, and you make loads of money here. And I'm like, it's definitely not the same,
It's not the same.
It's not the same. Because
if you did the same, especially if you came back to where we're from, what people are prepared to pay where we're from is much, much less.
Right. And it's the cost of living parameter, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to charge more, otherwise I couldn't afford to live where I live.
So if you came back here, cost of living here is way, way lower.
Yes.
But then what you can pull from people financially is also way, way lower.
Exactly.
Swings and roundabouts then.
Exactly. So started to make money, and it started off, I was working, I had 4 jobs, I was working for all these people, and then I started to go out on my own and do at-home stuff, and then shared a studio with a friend of mine, and then the next step was there was 2 rooms in that studio, so we got our own rooms, and that place was nuts. It was a hilarious place to work. The guy that ran it was like a hoarder that's probably in his mid-70s. And so you'd walk in, and the foyer, you'd have like statues with mala beads on them, next to a lamp, next to a pile of books, next to some fake flat, all on the floor.
I think I remember that studio.
Do you?
Yeah.
It was, people who come in and they go, oh, isn't this very eclectic? Yeah. And I'd be like, it's not mine. Can you just walk in there, please?
Don't look.
Yeah,
Close
exactly.
your eyes. You can open
walk
them
into
now.
my lovely studio with its nice pillows. Yeah. Hilarious. And so then we upgraded from there and moved to the spot that we're in now.
Yeah.
And then I started hiring people.
And so far, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's fab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a whole team of people. It's great.
I knew you'd slay it. I knew you would. I remember you talking about it, going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. You'll be fine.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Because you don't have anything.
Yeah.
You walk in blind and you have no idea if it's going to work. And
yeah. Put some fire in your soul. Take big risks. 6 months. So how long did it take it for it to be profitable?
6 months.
That's an insanely fast turnaround for a business, don't you?
Thank you.
It really is. It really is. When they offer out business loans, they're like, realistically, you shouldn't be expecting to make a profit for 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah,
So
I'd have heard 2 years is average.
2 years is average. 18
but,
months is
it's like when I wasn't massaging, I was out talking to people.
Yeah.
If you want something to
Pay
work.
attention, folks. If you want something to work.
If you want something to work, you've got to put your time and your energy into it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Did business coaching earlier this year. Tried that for about 6 weeks and threw the towel in because I was like, "You fuckers don't get work." They're like, "What's the magic formula that makes the business work?" You fucking work really hard. Jacob's laughing. This is Jacob's business. He's 25, right, Jacob? Yeah, he's got his own successful business. Always fucking working. How many days a year are you off? None? Zero. Oh, I want a business. Oh, you want a business? Okay, that equals nervous breakdowns. Probably about 5 or 6 nervous breakdowns. You just work all the time. People look at it and they go, that sounds amazing. Yeah, it sounds amazing. It's different from the inside though, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you're doing something that you love though, and it is your baby.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. It's terrifying, it's upsetting, and it's good fun. And it's like life, but you get good at it as well, don't you?
You do.
Like your stress
you get way
levels,
more efficient.
So even when there's big incidents, your stress level response decreases, your adrenal response decreases to these events, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's got a lot to do. For me, it's easier as well, in a sense, because of the type of work that I do.
Right.
So my work is very meditative.
Yeah.
And I'm in a very mellow environment, which is very supportive to your nervous system all day, every day. And I have plenty of time to think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I am in a supportive environment for all of those things. And also when I moved to California, it's like I'd always sort of done yoga and I'd always been into meditation, but particularly going into massage therapy and being in Southern California where it's promoted all of the time, it's easier to get more in flow with all of those things. And then
And there's plenty of athletes there and ex-athletes and they have
tons.
They have money there as well, don't they?
Tons. And I mean, and even the people that aren't athletes, everybody there is athletic.
That's true. Your baseline for athleticism. You know, the only place that's like Encinitas have ever lived is Browns Bay in New Zealand. Just outside Auckland. And so like if you go to say like, we're going to do a kickboxer size class with a bunch of like women in their 50s, that'd be fine. They'll slaughter you.
Yeah.
They'll leave you on the floor. I remember going when
shredded.
I was like 32, 33 when I lived in New Zealand. They battered me. Yeah, shredded.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of middle-aged ladies. Yeah, but they're rocking 8-packs and they are fit. Yeah. So the baseline for athleticism there is significantly higher, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's very outdoorsy, isn't it? Because it's lovely. It's sunny all year round, basically. And that's probably part of it as well. People have got to be in swimwear 11 months out of the year.
Yeah.
You know, so you do...
You don't want 3 bellies.
I mean, it's preferable not to have that and then go on the beach and be surrounded by everyone else who's just come in from surfing and an 8-mile hike. Yeah.
What was the class you got me to go to that was like hot yoga, but also CrossFit? Do you remember that?
Yes. What do they call that? Power sculpt?
Power sculpt.
Power sculpt. I think it is power sculpt. You basically do a weights class in a hot yoga room.
Yeah,
so it's 100 odd degrees.
Yeah.
And they call it is in a yoga studio.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with yoga. I think you do one sun salutation at the beginning.
Just to tick the yoga box.
Just to tick the yoga box, literally. And then you just go into, deadlifts. And
I remember nearly dying with you in that class.
They're so fun though, aren't they?
Oh, fun. Oh, the fun of it. Please let me do more. Lifting weights in a very hot room was my favorite thing.
It's great. I think I'd just had a baby then as well.
So chronologically, you're in Encinitas, you leave anthropology, set up your own business.
Yeah.
And then you meet your second husband. Mm-hmm. And
everything went swimmingly from there. Ta-da, the end.
You met your second husband.
Oh, you're sweating, yeah.
And then
we all lost a lot of sleep, yeah.
And then we all lost a lot of sleep. How long was it before you had your first child?
Do you mean after I met him?
Yeah.
Well, we were friends. I met him through friends. We were friends for a couple of years. Then we started dating. So I've probably known him 3 years.
Yep.
Probably known 3 years.
And how long was it before you got married?
We got married when Finn was 3 months, so probably a year after.
A year after.
Yeah. Year and a half? I don't know.
Year and a half.
I think I've again blocked some things out. Really talented at this. I don't know if you know anything about our childhood, but
I do. I have some insight into your childhood. Yes. Was it a safe childhood environment?
Perfectly safe, and there was nothing to be ignored.
No. You didn't develop intense dissociative skills to survive it. And then, so you had Finn, and then your second baby.
And then had Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah. And then we separated pretty soon after that.
Pretty soon after.
Yeah, Charlie was 18 months.
How long into the lockdown was it when you separated? Was it like 2020 or 2021 when you separated?
2020. So lockdown was in March, and he started having an affair with one of my best friends in April.
It's nice of him.
Yeah. It's great timing too.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, it was lovely.
And then I brought my hot mess to come and see you.
You did?
And during lockdown, I had to come in through the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
With the way that virus worked, if you left Europe and you wanted to enter America, the American Medical Board just said, if you come in through the Dominican and you spend 2 weeks there,
fine.
It's either Dominican or Serbia, because Serbia, the air in Serbia stopped the virus. And so you could go to Serbia for 2 weeks, or you go to Dominican for 2 weeks. So I went through the Dominican.
The water in the Dominican could probably stop the virus.
I think it's the water in the Dominican. It goes through your skin through osmosis and drowns it. So So anyway, I came to see you in...
you just wanted to go to an all-inclusive.
I just wanted to be in the Dominican. Like, I wanted to do my bachata moves and be like, I can do this dance, you know. So that ended in the sort of 2020.
Yep.
And then you separated. Yeah.
So I think I started talking to them about their affair in the April. And
could you not do that?
If it would be preferable to me, if you could not make this weird, because they weren't having sex yet.
Yeah.
But I was like, this word for word, this isn't going to go in a direction that's going to be good for any of us, I don't feel.
Yeah.
And they were both like, you're nuts.
Yeah.
And controlling.
Yeah.
And horrid.
You are nuts and controlling and horrid if you try and stop your husband and your best friend from having sex.
Yeah.
Them's is the rules.
Them's the rules.
Them's is the rules.
Yeah.
Stop trying to stop us from just having fun.
Having the things.
Just let me do whatever I want.
We want to drink until 3 a.m. and hang out together.
Yeah.
I was like, can you not?
Is it better if you don't?
So then we went into couples counselling for a while.
How did that go?
Great. Yes, very good.
He was very responsive.
It's funny because it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. So by that point, that was already summer. So they were already sleeping together by then. And my therapist, I call her my therapist because I continued to see her after we separated and he stopped seeing her. But she hated him so much.
We're not really supposed to do that, but go on.
At all.
It's frowned upon.
At all. So I eventually had to stop seeing her. When I was just seeing her one-on-one, I had to stop seeing her because she would say things to me like, and I quote, "The best thing you could hope for is that he dies or goes to jail for a very long time."
She sounds like me.
She really did. And I was like, no, I know where you're coming from, but I do have children.
He is the father of my kids.
It would be maybe not the best for them to just not have anybody.
Having him clipped is, going to be awkward.
Hilarious. But so when we were all in therapy together, I think it was very apparent to her that they were already in a full-blown relationship. It was not apparent to me.
But
so
did she come to therapy as well?
Sorry, no.
Oh, okay.
It was very apparent to the therapist.
I was going to say that would be very Californian.
It would be. It honestly really would be. Hiya, love, got a question. Could you pop over? Yeah, it would be. So she, the therapist, I think it was just really obvious. And so I'm there, crying my heart out, trying to save this marriage because I've got a family and I've got children. And I think she was like side-eyeing me, like, love, hello, the thingy with the what's it,
hey, I can't tell you, but you know what it is.
But there's a big clue and it's the weapon you're married to.
I had two therapists do that with the ex that may not be named.
Yeah.
We were like, we'll go couples counselling. And they were both nice men, but they both let me know in very certain terms, like this was going nowhere.
It's not going to go anywhere.
One of them was like, so you're an online expert in narcissism, is it? And I went, yes. And what do you think you're seeing? And I was like, what do you mean?
And you're like, what am I seeing? With what?
Yes. She was like, let's go through the list. The other fellow was South African, and he was like, there is. He said it in such a weird diplomatic way, but he really let me know. It was like, there is no chance for a positive outcome for you coming to me for couples therapy here. It's not going to go anywhere. And I'm not saying it's her, but it's not you. Because I was in such deep denial. I was like,
absolutely.
Are you saying there's something wrong with my bed? Is that what you're saying, lad? Yes. I'm not saying yes, but also yes. Yes. So
she'd also said to me, because when we stopped when we'd stopped doing couples counselling, I said, I'd like to continue to see you. And she said, yes, please. And I said, but I also want him to keep seeing you. I think it'd be really beneficial.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't think you understand the type of immersion, that's the word she used, that he would need in order for therapy to be successful.
Oh, she used the word immersion. So she was fully cognizant of narcissism and psychopathy.
And yes,
because we like usually in that field, we don't know if it would work. Anybody who has any sense of if there's any hope whatsoever for narcissistic personality disorder, they're talking about you've got to stick them in a gulag.
And that's what she said.
Right.
She was like, you're talking rehab, padded room, 90-day minimum.
Yep.
And then you could start therapy.
Then you begin from there, yeah.
She was like, talk therapy isn't going to do anything.
Yeah, breath work, meditation, reparenting, probably crying episodes with ayahuasca or iboga or whatever the really strong psychedelics
Southern
are.
California, that's what we do on a Saturday.
Yeah. But it's weird in America though, because aren't there some states where if somebody's very, very sick, or is it with children, you can, there are actually places where people will come and take people against their will and take them to a camp. I
don't know.
Maybe I made that up from a film or something. But I think there are states where it can be quite invasive.
People do, what do they call that? Interventions.
Yeah.
But it's like family oriented, blah, blah, blah. But you probably, right? I think technically, but that's a pretty high pressure way of doing it though, isn't it? I mean, you've got everyone you know and love in a room
staring
saying,
at you like,
you're fucking failing. Yeah. Get it together.
We're not enjoying this. Yeah. We have to stop. So, this segues neatly into the subject of narcissism. What's your interest in narcissistic abuse then?
What's my interest?
Yeah, what experiences have you had?
I think probably a deeply embedded history in narcissistic abuse has led me into some sort of interest in it.
How was your childhood?
My childhood was very peaceful. You just get coffee up your nose.
It's good coffee. Thank you, Jacob. So
our dad was an interesting character.
Tell me about that.
Quite non-present, and do you like how I just speak very differently from you, don't I?
You have learned California speak. My father was not really present. Sorry, carry on.
Quite non-present, yeah. And then when he was present, he was sort of all over the place, wasn't he? Like very controlling. And, well, that was it really. Those are the only two options. Very controlling or not fucking there.
Not very controlling or not there. Mm-hmm. Why was he not there? What was he doing?
Working and having affairs and roaming around. Who knows?
Around. Being a gyppo. Being a gypsy.
Mm-hmm.
He's being a gypsy.
Mm-hmm.
Childhood, not very safe, not very comfortable.
Just not very consistent is probably a good word for it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that there was elements of clinical narcissism there?
In my dad?
In your childhood?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe elements of psychopathy as well?
Absolutely. I mean, my dad is somebody that... So I stopped talking to our dad when I was 29, 30.
How many years ago was that?
10, 12.
Because I did the same thing at the same time at like 28, I think I was.
You were a couple of years before me, weren't you?
Yeah. We're 4 years apart. And I think I did 4 years before you, yeah.
And I think at that point, I was the only one of 7 children that was still speaking to him. But I also...
7 children that we know of.
I mean, and one of them I didn't find out about until I was 27, so... Yeah.
The Portuguese girl.
Yeah, the young one. So technically I'm the second youngest, but I'd always been the youngest before that one. And so I think a lot of information about my dad was sort of hidden from me. And it was all like whispers on the wind. You'd sort of hear things, but not. And so I never really had any hard truths. And, my experience with my dad when he was around, my memories of my dad, my childhood memories are singing songs and that sort of thing, And then I had this long conversation with him, this 2-hour Skype call with him when I was, whenever that was, 29, 30. And he told me a lot about his life in that conversation, for which he had absolutely zero shreds of remorse, or it was almost like he was telling a story about somebody else.
Yeah.
And
what he was revealing to you was really awful things that he'd done.
Absolutely horrendous, like atrocious acts that I didn't it wouldn't occur to me that I would ever know somebody that had done some of the things that he'd done. And so I didn't talk also for 2 hours.
He just got spilled to you.
He just talked and talked and talked and talked and talked and read things. Oh God, it's terrible. And at the end of it, it was the most adult moment I'd ever had in my life up to that point. And I said, I'm sorry that I can't be here for you while you're obviously going through something, but I can't participate in any of this. And I can't see any reason that I would ever invite you back into my life. But I know in this moment right now, I know that I can't have anything to do with you. And he went, oh, okay.
That sounds like him.
Sounds like a psycho.
He is a psycho. What was, at the time when you were talking to him, was that when the trial was coming up for him?
Yes. So that's what he was reading for me, was excerpts from victims' tales for the trial that he was being prosecuted for.
Somatically, I'm experiencing a lot of stress. I'm just going to do what is it called? A physiological sigh. Yeah.
Do a little hum. Activate that vagus nerve.
That was a long hum.
Yes. So yeah, that was the end of that for me.
And that was before his conviction.
Yeah.
And he was convicted for 11 years. He was sentenced to 11 years. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. What's it like?
Again, I become the youngest sibling where people don't tell me anything. It's great.
I sort of feel like that myself sometimes. I'm like, because obviously we've got older half siblings, and I haven't had the information has not cascaded down.
Yeah.
But then I'm not pursuing the information.
No, as you know, if you gave me the information, then I'd be like that little fish on Finding Nemo where I'd be like, hello, and it'd all just go away.
Just be compartmentalized and buried deep, very, very deep.
In the Sahara, it goes.
So you usually come back to the UK once every 18 months on average?
That's my ideal, yeah.
What's it like coming back to the world? Is it hashtag triggering?
No.
Don't mind.
No, it's really not. I could imagine that places in Portugal I would find triggering.
Okay, so there's more of a neural imprint for Portugal.
100%.
Spain.
I think because by the time we got back to the UK and we were living that's 10 to 18, so I had much more independent thought patterning. Whereas when I do my own reparenting and I go back to times and spaces that I struggled, there's some that are from very young. So before we even went to Portugal, so between 0 and 3.5.
Yeah.
But the vast majority are Portugal.
Okay. The worst, most triggering memories.
Yes.
Of Portugal.
Yeah.
Do you remember the names of the places where we lived? Do you remember Calinhos do Golf in Villamora?
Yeah.
And you remember Aldeia do Pinhal?
Aldeia do Pinhal is my main one.
Pinhal.
That's where, so if I'm just checking in on my inner child, as that's sort of what I teach people to do, is that you do this inner child reparenting, and then you usually have one version of self that you sort of tether to, that you go back to the most often. And mine is in Aldeia do Pinhal.
Okay. Have you ever been back to Aldeia do Pinhal?
No. I've driven past the road, but I haven't,
got out and had a look around just to see how traumatic it would be.
No.
I've done that.
I skipped. Did you?
Yeah, I've done it twice.
How many times did you cry?
It's weird. Like the dissociation starts to kick in pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm walking around, but I'm underwater.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't dissociate. This is pretty and nice. I'm like, that's not why we're here. Stay focused. And I just can't. So if I see, because obviously the house is there.
Yeah.
The Aldeia do Pinhal is not called Aldeia do Pinhal anymore. They changed.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they changed the name. But the houses are the same.
Same.
They're very small.
Yeah.
It's like really, really tiny little place.
Yeah. I would like to go back, because I wonder if it actually in reality is how it exists in my head.
Yeah.
You know, just like the architecture of that road and the pool at the bottom and the fields out the back, the orchards out the back.
The orchards at the back, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
The Naranjeria.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, do you think that experience, that imprint, influenced your adult relationships?
Yes. And I had a realization a couple of weeks ago. you'll like this one. I've not shared this with you yet. My realization was that as my relationship with my dad downward spiraled, so in my late 20s, that's when I selected those next two individuals.
OMG?
OMG.
Because we just did that in my therapy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interessante.
Yeah, I'm doing transactional analysis therapy. What are you doing? Is it somatic therapy?
It is. All of mine's somatic at the moment, yeah.
So literally just, I think we do it Fridays. It was 3 Fridays ago. And we figured out that once I'd gotten him out of my life.
Then you wanted to replace him.
I replaced him.
Yeah.
And then, because I didn't,
100%.
I didn't have, like people would see my channel and think, oh, this guy's only had narcissistically abusive relationships. He's either mad or a masochist.
Yeah.
But I really didn't. So before I cut him out, I had goals with like drug issues, little bits of eating disorders, depression, problems. But not, they weren't narcissistically abusive. They could be dicks, like, well, you know, they could be dicks.
Did not like that one.
But yeah, she maybe developed it as she got older, as she got further.
Was it meeting you?
She didn't have it. I was the trigger she needed. She was like, it could be a narcissist or whatever. I'm doing it. I'm definitely committing to this life. But there wasn't really much of that. And then the 3 relationships after I'd cut him out got progressively worse.
Exactly. And so mine have been 2.
Your 2 relationships.
Which is why I haven't dated since, because I'm like, okay, have I got it? Have I got it? Have I got it? Is my foundation good?
So just to be clear, in case we don't know who's watching it, your first husband...
Lovely.
Nice chap.
Lovely.
Yeah. And as far as you know, to this day, probably still a nice chap.
I'm sure he's lovely.
Yeah. So he's not included in that.
No.
But there was... So... you cut your father out, which is a healthy choice, and then the next fella you got with after him.
Yeah, well, it was that guy in Seattle. Remember that one?
The guy who came here.
Oh yeah,
that we brought around Liverpool and took him to the church.
And we took him to a wedding, and he punched the mirror off the wall in that lovely hotel because I was dancing with the guy that I've known since I was born.
Yeah,
who's 20 years older than me.
Oh, I know the guy that you must have been dancing with. Yeah. Oh, okay. So he flipped out over that, did he?
Lovely, calm fellow.
So that was actually a physically abusive relationship as well.
It was, yeah.
And was that both of you or mainly him?
Was I physically abusive? No, I actually, after we, right as we were breaking up, because I was trying to leave him, that's never very clean cut though, is it? And I actually moved half my stuff out, and then I pretended I was going to move back in because I knew it was bad for me. I pretended that I was going to move back in. And I went round and I was really nice to him for about half an hour just so that I could lull him into a false sense of security so that I could punch him. And
fucking mad scouse.
Mad scouse skills. And I punched him, and then of course in the face.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, fully.
While he was, you got him nice and relaxed.
Well, I had to get him to sit down because he was 6'4". I'm not 6'4".
He was a big boy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to have him sitting down, and then I punched him, and in that moment, I knew that we would break up and it would be done. Nothing to do with him or his reaction, but because I was like, I am now turning into you.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I'd ever hit him, first and last.
Yeah. Did you catch him clean?
I did.
Well done. The old boxing training.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was thrilled. But yeah, I was like...
Thank you so much.
You're such a love, and you always knew you were love. But then I was like, well, now we're morphing.
Yeah.
Because if my only... Because, I tried everything else. You try everything else, right? When you sense that they're dark siding, it's like you try and be nicer, you try and be strong, you try and feed them, you try and take them outside, you try and, whatever, you're trying to diffuse a situation that is impending. And nothing ever worked. But I was never brave enough to hit him because he was huge. But because he was a little bit softer because he thought I'd already gone, and then it was like the temptation that maybe I'd come back.
Yeah.
And then particularly, I think the knowledge for me that it was all premeditated on my part.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not you.
Yeah.
And this is not somebody I want to turn into. And this is not something I want anything to do with. So I got 2 therapists then.
We need to dial up the therapy real quick.
I had one I used to see on a Monday, which was like to talk therapy. You sit on your couch, I'll sit on my couch. She did some hypnotherapy and stuff.
Yeah.
And then that was my first ever somatic therapist who used to make me like hold on to squishy balls and roll around on the floor and stuff.
Okay.
I hated it when I started because I'm British and I was like, this is just very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But really cool stuff. And then after that one, I had my first somatic experiencing therapist. And then once I'd done about 4,000 hours of therapy and all these different methods, I was like, okay, I think I've sort of got myself back together.
Yeah.
And then when I met the second guy that I married, when I'd moved to California, I don't know that anyone really works properly, because everyone's got money. And if you don't have money, everyone works in bars and restaurants and stuff. And I started working for this woman who used to be married to a really famous skateboarder. And
you could say his name, can't you?
No, that doesn't make me feel good about myself.
Okay. We won't name drop the famous skateboarder that people will know who it is. There's a really famous skateboarder in North County.
And so when I was working for her, she would do cocaine on a Tuesday morning after she dropped her kid off at school.
Wow.
So she'd be like, here you go, have some of this. And I'm like, am I supposed to still work? Or is this where we stop working?
Yeah.
And that was what it was like when I moved there, is that I just there's a lot of drugs there.
Yeah.
And I did ecstasy at university, but I hadn't touched a drug in 10 years at that point, And so we sort of started drinking a lot more than I had and doing drugs that I hadn't done in a long time. And it was really fun. Went to loads of festivals, did loads of things, but I was not in a sound state of mind, therefore, when I met this guy.
Yeah.
And he was the most fun. He's captain fun.
Yeah.
That's all he's good at,
Yes.
So it wasn't a good lead in, I think. And I think as well, with all the therapy that I'd done, I do think that there's an element of emotional maturity that is required for the therapeutic process to land.
Okay.
Because a lot of the stuff that I now teach, I sort of dabbled in, like inner child work, perfect example. I was absolutely petrified of inner child work. And I was with a male therapist when I was doing it, which probably was not the best choice for me, considering that most of my trauma came from men.
Yeah.
So I could basically pretend to do it.
Ooh, performative therapy.
Yeah.
Keep the therapist happy. That's a nice fawn response.
Yeah. So I could do it well enough. And I think as well, like, this is where what I mean by emotional maturity is that because he was happy and I was doing something and I was doing a thing, sort of convinced myself that was enough, even though I knew that I wasn't doing it properly and it wasn't really enough. And that's what I mean. I wasn't mature enough to be able to say to myself, you're not digging deep enough here.
I think a lot of people watching this will guiltily resonate with that, what you're describing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel guilty saying it, even though I feel like 10 years later, I've actually done the work.
Feel more guilty.
Feel more shame.
Feel more shame. We are in Liverpool after all. It's a good Catholic city. You're in the perfect place. So you said emotional maturity is required for the therapy to land.
Yeah, because I think you have to be able to admit to yourself where you actually are in your process.
Okay.
So if you're saying, well, I do yoga and I meditate and I journal every day and I'm very aware of my feelings and I go to therapy, but what you're talking about is stretching and breathing twice and writing down, I love you on your bathroom mirror. And then you spend the other 23 and a half hours of the day obsessing about the person that you're no longer with.
Yeah.
You're not progressing in your own therapeutic context,
When I work with people, I have it's 80% female client base. I know that they're doing what you're talking about because at some point in the therapy, they'll break down and like a child, they'll say, I've already done the therapy for this. I've spent so long doing therapy on this. And I'm always aware that it's like buying a gym membership and going in the gym, moving a few weights around.
Wiping yourself with a towel a lot.
Yeah, and going, I think I'll take a selfie and go home now. And eat a cake. I think I've deserved this. You're not getting in there and getting your hands dirty. You're doing it performatively.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a temptation because in many ways...
Because it's horrifying and terrifying and painful.
Well, it is. It can be horrifying, terrifying and painful, yeah. But everything in our culture kind of encourages and rewards performative action, symbolic action, rather than authentic action. So are you saying that the emotional maturity comes from authentic action?
It's cyclical, isn't it? So yes, it does. And you also need emotional performity to hold yourself to, you need emotional maturity to hold yourself to authentic action.
So for people watching this, and they're like, okay, that sounds cool. How do I become more emotionally mature?
You have to be able to have a conversation with yourself where you're not pretending to be someone else, which is where, to me, meditation is so foundational for a healing process, because there's a lot of different functions for it. And I'd say that my other one in meditation is being able to create space. But the primary one is, can you find yourself? And who are you when there is nothing else around? Who are you when there's only you and yourself there, and you can get underneath that monkey brain chatter? If you're underneath that and it goes quiet for a very, very long time, and then you're feeling words instead of hearing bleep, 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 bleep.
Yeah.
What's that? Who's that? Who's there? What does that feel like? Do
you work mainly with women?
Yes. I mean, I have a fair few male clients as well.
Yeah.
But
do you? Is there a sex-based difference here? Do you think this is more of a female coping mechanism? Because I've not heard as many men complain about that. So could this, over the millennia, because of not having the muscle that men have and living in fear that your partner can batter you to death, which is true for most women, there's just a size, weight difference.
Yeah.
The defense mechanisms for men become different to women across time.
Yeah.
Do you think the dissociation and kind of performative action and like, I'm pretending to be this, but it's not really this, but if I keep pretending, it'll be, do you think that's more of a female?
Absolutely. Females are way more appropriate towards a fawn response, aren't they? I mean, because we're trained that way.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't agree with something, then you just smile politely and nod.
Right. Right.
It's not attractive or culturally appropriate to be combative as a woman. And you need drive and you need fight to be able to fight for yourself towards a healing process. So it's probably part of where you're going there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going. I'm sort of feeling around here. So is that also part of women can't be angry? Good girls aren't angry. Anger is ugly. Is that a similar sort of a thing?
Yes, it all goes in the same box, doesn't it? And that's a lot of the work that my mentor, Summer Nicole, that I worked with a lot in the last few years. That's one of the things that she teaches women across the board, is how to get really comfortable with being angry and how to release anger in a way that feels successful, not dirty and shameful.
Right. So then, particularly for women, but for men as well, would you say that owning anger and owning, let's say, the uglier emotions, there's no ugly emotion, there's just emotion, but if you perceive it as ugly, that's got to be a part of emotional maturity?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a key.
Because that's where you get stuck, isn't it? Is if you're going into a process that you find really difficult and say, inner child healing, that's what it was for me. Going back and looking at myself as a child and feeling weak and feeling ashamed and feeling depressed and feeling anxious and diving back into what I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to look out from that space again.
Yes.
You know, it was too scary.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to admit that it was all of those feelings. You know, you sort of want to look at it like, well, I was the depressed thing, as opposed to I was feeling depressed, which is owning it. You know, okay. I'm feeling a feeling.
Okay.
I was the depressed thing. It's the same with anxiety. So that's something that we talk about a lot with my clients, is you move people out of this trendy thing of saying my anxiety. Well, my anxiety, because then your anxiety all of a sudden is dictating how you behave and how you exist. Well, what is anxiety? A culmination of feelings that lead to a somatic response. So now if we pull apart the feelings, now you have control over your response, because there are feelings that happen in your body, and your somatics are something that you can assert. So you respond to your feelings, but you can assess your feelings. This is, again, meditation. How do you create the space between feelings coming up and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm sensing this, this, and this. I'm identifying this as this feeling, that's that feeling, that's that feeling. Now, how would I like to respond? Instead of going instantly into a flight or fight response, creating space in the middle.
You said a lot there.
Sorry.
It's good though. You're making me do a thing. So
go
on.
I was going to say the emotional maturity aspect would be sort of the space in the middle.
The space in the middle between
the thinking and the responsing. But you have to be able to, which is why you teach people emotional literacy. That is the foundation of every course you've ever done. Because you have to be able to identify what's happening in your own body, which is feelings arising. Yeah. And I talk about that in a lot of different ways, like really looking at what happens physically in your body when you sense a feeling. Because sometimes we get so overwhelmed so quickly that you go into a fight or flight response to mask the feeling that's coming up before you even know what the feeling is. I'm uncomfortable. I'm going to freeze, flight, fight, whatever. But to tell you what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to look at the you don't even know what it is yet. So I know if I am becoming afraid, that I get almost like a flutter in my solar plexus. And that happens before my brain knows that something is happening that is about to cause fear in my body, because my body senses it before my brain catches up, right? So this is where the pause comes in, is that if I have done enough practice with myself to learn what my body is doing, oh, this is my fear response, this is my joy response, this is my whatever, then I get to slow everything down and decide what my response should be. And it's not always perfect, is it? It's not like now if I get triggered, I'm like, don't worry, I'm calm as a lord at all times. Not at all. Yeah. But if I've got a lower grade trigger, there's no way I'm going off to the moon, which is what I would normally do. Goodbye.
I'm out of here. I'm done. You think sometimes when people say my anxiety, it's like a fake ownership that's actually a disavowal. Was that what you were suggesting? Or right?
I think, yeah, it's sort of, I hate to use the term victim mentality. It's a little bit victim mentality. It also is just trendy to say that now, because it's like, oh, if you say my anxiety, then you have something that's bigger than you. So you just can't always control it,
So you're displacing responsibility.
Right. Which I understand that's how, having now experienced anxiety, I understand that's how it feels, but I don't think that it's a healthy response to give your power away like that.
Yeah. Okay. So the point you were making is a little bit different to the one I heard.
Okay.
No, but that's the right thing. What you're saying is the right one.
Because you want to claim responsibility for something so that you can change it. If it's something that's bigger and stronger than you, then what are you going to do?
So when somebody says my narcissist, is that a similar thing?
No, because that's more like a noun at that point. There's somebody else that's outside of their body.
So my anxiety, the sentence structure and the thought structure would be something like, my anxiety makes me, blah, 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 blah.
Because of my anxiety, I can't.
Because of my anxiety, I can't.
Imagine if somebody said that, because of my narcissist, I can't. You'd be like, ugh.
Well, they do. Because of my narcissist, I can't have friends.
True.
So even though they're using language that seems to be claiming it, there is something that's like, it's externalizing.
Right.
It's shifting the locus of control.
Yes, exactly.
We like locus of control.
We like locus of control. And we need that thing to be internal at all times.
Internal locus of control.
So it's just a practice, isn't it? It's like, it's almost NLP, isn't it? If you're talking in a way that leaves you feeling disempowered, you need to change how you're talking.
Okay. Because talking is thinking.
Because talking is thinking and thinking is doing.
So what language should they be using?
How I feel when I do this, and therefore I'm going to,
Right.
Because that's all me. That's all me. That's not something that is happening to me.
Yeah.
That's something I'm experiencing.
Yes. That's
different. It's sort of like the thing with, is it who you are or is it how you behave?
Okay.
It's a behavior.
Yeah.
It's not an action. It's not sort of who you are ingrained in your genes and in your cells.
Right.
It's a behavior.
Yes. Okay, good. I've not quite framed it this way, And I think that's an important reframing. I also like the point about becoming more emotionally mature in order for the therapy to actually land. That would solve a lot of sort of wanky therapy. Like, I go to therapy twice a week and I'm not getting any better.
And exactly. And it also solves a lot of when people come and sort of say, it's like you were talking about with the business. Well, what's the end point though? What do I do at the end? And, you know, like one of the first things that I ever teach people, I get almost every single one of my clients to do is we write lists of peace and joy, things that move you towards joy, towards peace, away from joy and away from peace. Because if you're coming out of a toxic relationship, certainly if you've been brought up in a toxic childhood environment and then you've been choosing toxic relationships in adulthood, you have no idea what you like because you're used to being told. You don't know what you think. You're used to being told. And just the littlest things of joy and peace, of even when it comes down to what food you eat, what supermarket you go to, what people you hang out with, what road you choose to drive on, what time of day you're allowed a cup of tea, all of these things have a massive effect on your internal environment. And I can see people, because I'll talk about this in session 1, you know, going, they're like twitching because they're like, I'm telling you, I've just come out of a relationship where I'm being tortured and you want to talk to me about my favorite supermarket, you know? Yeah. But the thing is, and people don't want to do it because they want the end game. And the end game is, how do you make yourself peaceful? How do you make yourself happy? That's the end game. And so your job in the very beginning of a therapeutic process is to look after yourself, to cotton wool yourself, to really be careful with absolutely everything that you're doing, saying, thinking, feeling, putting into your body, because it's all massively effective.
And what you're talking about is, yes, so people are trying to avoid it by some cognitive trickery. But you're saying the self needs to be strengthened so that you can actually reject the toxicity. Because otherwise, if we just make you say no, and force you to do mirror work or, I don't know, some affirmations.
And then everybody goes back.
In 2 weeks' time, you'll be back with them.
Everybody goes back because they still don't know what they want, because they still don't know what they like, because they still don't know where they're comfortable.
Because the self is still weak.
And because they're uncomfortable all the time, which of course is very weakening.
What if people do coaching with you? What's your style? What can they expect from you?
It's a lot of action. Teach people a lot about what they can do in daily life. And everybody gets homework. So it's definitely not like we sit for an hour every week and chat. We do. But I also lead people through somatic reparenting meditations. And we do longer sessions when we do that. So there's plenty of room for talking. But what I did years of talk therapy, and what I found helped me is moving emotion through my body, moving experiences through my body, and actually changing my lifestyle to support who I want to be and who I think of myself as when I think of my little self on an angelic pedestal, as we all have the capacity to do and forget. But if I were that person, what would that person be thinking, feeling, doing with their day? And moving more towards that.
Excellent. You've given me a lot to think about.
Good, I like to do that.
Yeah, I'll probably steal it and just put it in a course.
Totally.
Not credit you at all. People like, we saw the interview, your sister said this. No, she didn't. It's
who?
I'm
an only child?
I'm an only child and a genius to boot. Where can people find you if they would like to book a session with you? How should they contact you?
Anna@SpartanLifeCoach.com.
Anna@SpartanLifeCoach.com.
Yes.
Anna, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And you're available for Zoom calls and
Zoom.
Excellent.
Coaching people all around the world. It's great.
Excellent. Obviously, we'll be back in America soon, but I hope we can do more Skype-style interviews and chat. And
great.
I'd like to get deeper into this with you as well.
I know. Just scratch the surface.
We did. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. If you want to have a session with Anna, it's Anna@SpartanLifeCoach.com. And we look forward to hearing from you very soon. Cheers.